The big question our community would have to you is, are we becoming investable?
Not really. I think the investability of South Africa is still dictated by the political realities. And, the government, the real levers of power on ideology are still held by the ANC, which is a, leftist, quasi-socialist, patronage-based, cadre-based, mafia-type organization. South Africa has this moronic approach to international affairs of dealing with the gangster states and the loony bins and, the North Koreas and the Irans and the Libya, it's just insane. The ANC is a patronage network, okay? They're like the vampire squid. They capture the economy and they sucked it dry. South African Airways was an airline and became an employment agency. Eskom, the same thing. It was just a place where the pigs could get into the trough and steal as much as they can. And what's happening now is,
Yeah, guys, so in this video, Rob Hersov is actually breaking down the whole problem with cadre system and, the whole system of patronage that actually encapsulates what the ANC appears to be as a governing body. And actually, I think it's really interesting because I think I made in the last video how the whole patronage system sort of like influences the, disbursal of tenders for bids for contract, and how I think up to the tune of 428 million rands was actually disbursed to a ghost company, as a tender to supply power plants, gas power, oxygen plants to hospitals in South Africa. And so you hear Rob Hersov here in this video breaking down the, characteristics of the ANC as a governing body and how that whole patronage system, as a system of patronages, govern what its foundational framework is, and probably why it might not be the best system to govern South Africa, and how the GNU is shining light on that. Let's listen to what Rob Hersov has to say about that. And I'll be breaking down a really interesting report I found on the Daily Maverick that explains how the whole cadre system contributes to the water crisis in Johannesburg, and how the entire water board in Johannesburg doesn't have any engineer, especially in light of the water crisis that Johannesburg is experiencing.
The minute people see the difference that the DA, Patriotic Alliance, and a few others will have made in a very short period of time in terms of efficiencies, changes, tackling corruption, they'll realize that those are the people to back. And I think the municipal elections are really going to show the ANC out in every single urban area. The ANC will be dead in Gauteng. And at last, I think the DA and a few others will get to well over 50% and be able to fix Johannesburg and Gauteng. But it's unfixable right now. Unless the good guys have over 50%, it's not even worth trying because there are too many hands on too many tillers. You can fix some parts, and then the ANC cadres and gangsters will keep ripping Joburg apart with other hands on the tillers. So I think we need a bit of water under the bridge. We need to allow the good guys to show what they can do in a short period of time, and then the voters will start to notice. I don't think this can happen. It can't happen right now.
Who would the good guys be?
DA, Patriotic Alliance, Action SA, FF Plus, Rise Mzansi and Bosa, COPE, ACDP, those guys.
Right. So what's in all of this for...
and the capitalist wing of the ANC. Those sort of BEE types.
For the ANC right now. What is in... If what did Ramaphosa do this for? Was it holding on to power so that the cadres could eat until they can't eat anymore?
Correct. The ANC is a patronage network, okay? They're like the vampire squid. They capture the economy and they sucked it dry. South African Airways was an airline and became an employment agency. Eskom, the same thing. It was just a place where the pigs could get into the trough and steal as much as they can. And what's happening now is, the appointment of Nyati, and I can't remember the other guy's name, at Eskom, has brought proper business practices and efficiency to Eskom and is rooting out corruption. I mean, they've laid off a whole lot of people. They've created efficiencies in the system, and Eskom is starting to right itself. I mean, plus, of course, private sector getting into renewables has taken a lot of pressure off, and the economy's not growing. But they brought efficiencies into the system and showed the ANC, when the cold light of the GNU shines on the tenderpreneurs, the inefficiency, and all the gangsterism that's taking place, the only option the ANC has is to allow people to fix things. So, here comes the light of the DA and the PA shining onto corruption.
It was so interesting, Rob. I don't know if you've been following on social media the pictures that have been posted by McPherson and Steenhuisen about the two of them meeting President Key this week. And it's extraordinary to outsiders looking in. Not long ago, they would have been amongst the great critics of communist China. They looked like errant schoolboys looking at the headmaster, or a little starstruck in engaging with the Chinese premier. Is this expected?
Look, South Africa has this moronic approach to international affairs of dealing with the gangster states and the loony bins, and the North Koreas and the Irans and the Libya. It's just insane, completely insane. But I think it's quite smart of John and team to at least meet these people and hear them out. Just find out exactly what's going on. What is the relationship? What is South Africa getting? What is South Africa giving in return? So I think it's intelligent for them to at least get in front of these people.
But maybe also eyes being opened, the scales being removed. We do know that the chaos that's going on in the United States of America does not exactly make it a role model as it might have been 30, 40, 50 years ago for democracy.
30, 40, 50 years ago, in the 70s, we had, America had strikes on the street, things being burnt, everybody, running wild, the Vietnam War. It was a pretty sorry state. And as of today, I think what America's facing is just some polarization, but not, the disasters that they had in 75. America is still by far the strongest nation in the world, economically and militarily. All the great developments that are happening on the technology front are coming from America. America is the dominant gorilla on this planet. And I don't think it's in any state of negativity. I mean, if Kamala Harris comes in, things change on the margin. If Trump comes in, things change on the margin. But America's still the dominant animal by far. Don't write them off.
Don't get too close to China. Don't put all of your eggs in that basket. Remember that the US, it's very interesting you mentioned that, Rob, because our partners at the Financial Times today had a piece about the difficulty that the Chinese are having in producing their own chips, their own computer chips. The Americans have stopped sending or allowing NVIDIA to sell to them. And the Huawei is trying to produce chips, and after a lot of money being thrown at it, they just can't get it right. And so there's these kind of realities that one has to always be mindful of. Just coming back to South Africa itself, the rand has done well since the election, put on about 2 rand against the US dollar. The big question our community would have to you is, are we becoming investable?
Not really. I think the investability of South Africa is still dictated by the political realities. And, the government, the real levers of power on ideology are still held by the ANC, which is a, leftist, quasi-socialist, patronage-based, cadre-based, mafia-type organization. I don't think the ANC is going to survive, by the way. I think, in 5 years' time, the ANC will have disintegrated or fragmented into smaller pieces. It doesn't speak with one voice. They have no idea at their conferences what they actually represent. And they still have COSATU and the Communist Party as part of the ANC. It is moronic in this day and age to still have a Communist Party. I mean, Gwede Mantashe is a member of the Communist Party. How stupid is that? He should be embarrassed to even have that against his name. So the ANC won't survive.
You don't see progress on that front. And I guess for many people, the split in the ANC's happened. There's MK and the Zumarites and the Zondo Commission stars all being agglomerated in the one organization. You feel that that there's still more fracturing to come?
Yeah, because I think there's a sort of quasi-capitalist side in there. Enoch Godogwana, Fikile just moves in the wind. He's whatever you want him to be the next day. But I think there's a sort of quasi-capitalist group in the ANC that should split off and maybe form a new party with the DA and the PA and others. But then there's COSATU and the communists who have no relevance anymore in the ANC, and they at some point will probably spin off or fall apart or disintegrate. So the ANC, I think, has got more to lose and way further to fall. I don't know if that benefits MK or creates a whole new, lunatic pole or lunatic group, but I think the ANC is ultimately falling apart.
There was a very interesting conversation I had with Songezo Zibi, who I haven't seen for some years, who's now gone into politics. He's a sensible, thoughtful human being, very smart as well. And he said in our interview this week that he expects that there's going to be consolidation, mergers of political parties. And it was interesting. I did a few numbers, and if you put together the non-ANC DA IFP parties, like Songezo's Rise Mzansi, which is small at the moment, but it's young. BOSA, PA, Action SA. You've got a significant block already, and given that many of them were newcomers to the scene or have got the momentum in their side, this could be a joker in the pack. Do you think he's got? I suppose he's looking at it from a business point of view and saying, we're so fragmented, let's put a few mergers together. And he says he's already talking to others, to Musi and others, and let's put together something where we do have strength and unity.
So I think he's right. I mean, currently, Rise Mzansi, BOSA, and the others are of no consequence in South Africa right now. I mean, Rise Mzansi raised a hell of a lot of money and delivered nothing in terms of election results. They were just too weak on certain issues. Gayton was strong on issues and stayed consistent all along. Rise Mzansi was too fluffy and soft. And they're of no consequence right now. So I do think he's right to sort of pull together Musi and others and form, a new centrist party. That does make sense. But I think what makes more sense is for the DA to get off its arrogant high horse, realize it is, the second most important party in the country with 21%. That's a very strong position, and make up with the PA and make up with a whole lot of other parties and pull them together into a new party. I think that's probably more relevant.
Yeah, brilliant, guys. What do you think? So we'll jump right in. I think there's a really interesting report on the Daily Maverick that actually exposes how this whole issue with cadre deployment is actually one of the reasons that has contributed to the breakdown of water supply in Johannesburg. I think it's really interesting, really interesting and engaging report. I think we should sit back and listen to be able to understand some of the root causes of the whole water problem in Johannesburg. It says here that a data investigation shows that Johannesburg has actually already had 1,604 water cuts in October and also 3,318 water cuts in September. So this is almost like even probably a load shedding kind of situation. But anyway, it says that the months-long investigation by the Daily Maverick on this whole issue revealed how cadre deployment represents sort of like a key factor in crushing Johannesburg's water supply, and it also raises, sort of like what it calls a specter for collapse. There's this graphic here on the Daily Maverick, this report. You can actually find it for yourself online. It speaks about how, the graphic shows that out of, I think this is 14, 3, 6, 9, 12, 13 out of 13 officers that make up the water board, the Johannesburg water board. There's really no engineer, and the Daily Maverick actually thinks that this is really one of the issues that should actually be concerning. It says that this graphic of Johannesburg Water Board's latest, Johannesburg Water's latest board shows that it has bloated and that cadre deployment by the coalition led by the ANC, which controls the city of Johannesburg, has taken place at non-executive and executive levels. All right. It says that there was a young Communist League National Committee member. His name was Dinio Majavu. He's actually the chairperson and of this water board in Johannesburg. He says that Majavu, this report says that Majavu has no relevant experience for the role, other than the fact that the South Africa's Communist Party is in the governing alliance with the ANC, in Johannesburg. And then there's also this guy Giale Mogoye, who is actually a deployed member of the ANC Youth League, who has also no relative water experience. There's also Julius Maputla, who was actually removed in 2024, but was also now a direct party deployee. So I think this also raises concerns on, I think Getty McKenzie has also spoken a lot about it, that, there has to be the right people manning the right positions in South Africa, all right? So whoever it is that probably should be in the water board should have experience of water board. Nell De Beer speaks about it a lot, I think also on this channel, that, for police, people who have experience for policing should be the ones manning police. And this whole patronage system of the ANC that Rob Hersov now speaks about shouldn't be kind of like what leads to the appointments of positions, so to speak, in government. We see the problem Justice Minister Simlane is facing now at the moment, with the problem which she has with the coffee shop she bought at Sandton with a loan that was disbursed, during her time of mayorship at Polokwane. And that's really raising problems now for the Justice Minister, for someone who is at the helm of the justice affairs in South Africa, such a powerful nation as South Africa, to be having that kind of scandal at that repute. I think probably highlights to this whole problem of patronage and how, members in the ANC actually patronize by positions or posts, or may likely allege, this according to Rob Hersov now in this report, that then doesn't make the right people to man the right positions in South Africa. I think Ramagokba, anyway, is actually one of those people who escaped that whole thing, because he actually appears to be a man of systems. And I think from one of Franz Cronier's analysis, he argues that, the current Minister of Electricity, Ramaphosa, now has turned Eskom around. And Eskom is actually, when you even listen to his speeches, you can hear that this is a man of systems. He understands systems, you see, and all that. And so he's really putting that expertise into electricity. And so there has to be this kind of like manning of posts with the right people, so that these, the ministries can actually function according to the knowledge required to drive these ministries, not just as a level, as something that is done because of patronage, so to speak. But let's continue to analyze this whole problem with Johannesburg's water crisis. There's also this, the Daily Graphic, this report actually also shows that there's a graph here that actually shows that hundreds of thousands of residents in Johannesburg, they're actually, the graph shows how the times they have been without water. And also political interference is also a significant factor, building to this problem. And now says that the water supply has become like the load shedding crisis since the advent of Johannesburg's ruling coalition after the 2021 local government elections, So, in trying to dig deeper, Daily Maverick investigation here said that in October, there were 1,604 cuts in the first 9 days of the month. And also, there's an average of 178 areas without water per day in Johannesburg. And also then in September, it says that there were 3,318 water cuts and an average of 110 areas or streets or properties without water per day. I think that's really disturbing. They said that the Johannesburg is actually skirting day zero for the fourth time in the year, and the councillors in Johannesburg, they held an emergency meeting with the utility officials on 11th of October to fend off a provincial disaster. It says that half of the reservoirs in South Africa, they have leaks as a hot, dry summer loomed, for South Africa. A hot, dry summer looms for Johannesburg, which is South Africa's economic heartland. Now, there was also this company, the Johannesburg city water supplier called Rand Water. It says that unfortunately, the crisis of water, which was actually tried to have been prevented, has now materialized. The Rand Water speaking, it says that the water supply systems in Gauteng, including Rand Water reservoirs, they are critically low, and the situation is anticipated to worsen with the ongoing heat wave. So there's a current heat wave now, according to this report, and that's really worsening the whole problem with water shortage in Johannesburg. The report also says that water storage levels throughout Gauteng have actually significantly declined due to excessive water withdrawals by municipalities, raising concerns, all right? Now, this investigation goes on to say that none of the Johannesburg Water Board members is a professional engineer. That's actually part of this whole thing with cadre deployment and all that. It says that each one of the governing coalition partners of the council, they appear to have been deployed cadres. Among the members is a secretary and possibly a musician who this report calls Colin Sambo. It actually says that the utility needs profiles of its board members as they change so quickly. Many of the board members do not have degrees. It says that many, but none in the fields relevant to water, especially for a water system that is collapsing. So Johannesburg Water Board, it's really funny when I think about it. It says that the Johannesburg Water Board, right, has board members who have degrees. But these degrees, none of these degrees are in fields relevant to water. All right. And this is now really important because of the fact that Johannesburg is suffering from a really, severe water crisis. It has to be at a positionality where at least its board members, some should have experience with things related to water, but none of them have degrees that are related to water. So probably this is one problem also that needs to be ratified as well. It says that the appointment of this water board the appointments provide job opportunities or direct contracts to politically connected companies. All right. Now, it says that the ANC member of the Mayoral Committee, MMC, for Infrastructure, who's, I think the name here is Jack Sequila, chose not to comment on the rationale for the appointment for several months. But anyway, News 24 reported that this guy did not know about the water crisis in August. Now, it says that the whole graph that the Daily Maverick compiles here actually monitored the water cuts recorded by the city and the residents that showed that thousands, since April, thousands of water cuts have actually gone down since April in Johannesburg, and that this is not a normal water supply by any means. All right. It also argues that early in 2024, that there was a city official who, in an encrypted message sent with a disappearing timer, told Daily Maverick that a senior Johannesburg ANC leader is on a mission to totally take over the control of the entities of the city of Johannesburg, ensuring his own people are appointed, even if it means by hook or by crook. So this is kind of like the ways in which whistleblowers are functioning now in Johannesburg. There's also the issue with whistleblowers in Gauteng, and whistleblowing has become sort of like a thing, in South Africa, to kind of like highlight some of the inner mechanisms that are actually working towards the appointment of officials in these, ministries. It says that this senior official who this whistleblower is trying to expose, according to the Daily Maverick, his targets are Picky Top, City Power, and Joburg Water. So what is the modus operandi that this senior official wishes to deploy to be able to sort of like, in colloquial terms, capture the water body and the water board in Johannesburg? It says his modus operandi is as follows. He brings his people to the board as his share of the seats with other parties in the coalition government, and then he floods the board with yes men and yes women to ensure that there's no resistance to his decision making. So we see that this is whole politics, and what is unfortunate is that despite the breakdown of the water body and the water cuts in Johannesburg, politics seems to be playing a much more upper hand in driving these things rather than functioning and efficiency of the city. It's really unfortunate. But anyway, there was also another report by Kaya Koko, and reported in Mail and Guardian that Johannesburg's Water Chief Operations Officer, I think his name is Guguletu Pakati, actually says that this guy was one of these, that she was one of these appointments. It says that she was previously the board chairperson and was parachuted in from the board to the C-suite. Pakati is a built environment specialist with technical engineering qualification, but no specific water experience. There was also another chartered accountant here who was called Kaogelo Malaba. He's actually a chartered accountant, but does not have work experience or all the advertised qualifications for the role. He says that he is committed to getting the taps running efficiently, and reliably. But then it says that these roles are actually essential to managing the water utility in such a crisis, that hospitals like Rahima Musa, as well as scores of schools, clinics, and old age homes in that region in Johannesburg, are suffering from water cuts, which is afflicting the city's most vulnerable people. So in my final thoughts anyway, to really be able to run South Africa smoothly, I think the ANC would need to really, differentiate between deployment for posts and also efficiency, okay? Because I think the whole thing with this cadre deployment, the whole thing with patronages and all that is actually a factor that runs across a lot of Africa's political climate. I remember when I studied Ghana's history as well, there were some issues with the whole patronages and what is called cronyism, and which is a kind of like sort of like a tribal allegiance or ethnic allegiance, so to speak, or probably some other forms of allegiances that then decide who would get which post, regardless of whether that person can bring positivity and positive energy and efficiency to that post. But cronyism was a factor. So I think this is what is really, manifesting here in the ANC political structure, and I think on the long run, it might not be so wise for South Africa. Although if this kind of patronage is actually done to match people who actually fit the jobs with that, then probably it might help. But you can't bring up an accountant to man, the technicalities that are expected from such a technical engineering, dependent field as this kind of like water. But especially now in terms of crisis, I think in a period of crisis like this, if possible, all 13 members of that water board have to be different forms and from different areas of the water engineering field, so that there can be efficiency in trying to really curb the whole problem with the water crisis. I'm beginning to see, I've seen a lot of videos about, this whole thing with water, and I think it's a really disturbing one. I remember now why it makes sense, why the Action SA, I think Michael Beaumont at the time really claimed that, we've been talking a lot about load shedding in South Africa, but one thing that might need to be considered now is a water shedding, which would actually be a worse one than load shedding. And so it's something to really take note, and how cadre deployment, according to the Daily Maverick, is contributing to this is actually something worth thinking about, and hopefully that the ANC can actually, or probably even the leadership of the government of national unity, can actually start addressing this, so that the right people can actually man the right jobs, whether it's by cadre deployment or whatever, but let there be the right people manning the right jobs. And in this way, these ministries can actually perform much more better. But I don't know, what do you guys think about this Rob Hersov's speech here, and also the analysis? Share your thoughts in the comments.